Welcome to the latest Now and Next webinar. In the last decade, video consumption has nearly doubled, but its impact has declined. Why has this happened? Today we'll explore the tension between serving and planning and how we need to get both working together. We look at how the breadth of options can often get in the way, but why Indigenous media is so important. We'll also look at the importance of measurement in a post-cookie world. And finally, we'll look at the robots and how AI can help us refocus our upper funnel efforts by letting it do more of the lower funnel optimizations. I'll pass you on to Ali and Andy for today's session.
In the last decade, video consumption has grown enormously, by 60%, with a lot of moving parts. But results have gone in the opposite direction. Impact is down. Why? One argument is that we've become too short-sighted, too myopic. We're serving poorer quality ads, and we've been far more interested in how we serve than what we serve. We need to look beyond the plumbing. In media, we're obsessed with how we serve the ad, with what Ritson calls the pipe. We should be less concerned with how and much more with what we say and where we say it. It would be very easy to turn this into a facts and figures presentation about the video landscape. It's really complex with lots of technical intricacies, but that would perpetuate the problem. We argue that the cookie is part of the blockage here. Its death is causing a lot of anxiety, but let's look at it as a huge opportunity for us. John Wanamaker famously said, "Half of my advertising is wasted. I just don't know which half." The cookie promised to solve this problem, but in many ways, it made matters worse. To stretch an analogy, if media is the piping and the cookie is part of the blockage, it's led to a huge leak. We now swim in a flood of metrics. Many of them are meaningless. We spend hours analysing these, but for how much gain? There is a lot that we can monitor, but only some things that we should measure. And this isn't a digital problem, it's a marketing problem. And marketing is an important word. Our job is to market. We should drive sales, but we are not sales. The death of the cookie is a big opportunity for us because it brings back the art of planning, of thinking about how people consume, about what they're thinking, and about what we need to say to them. The cookie's death means we need to get to know them and walk in their shoes, not just stalk them and follow them home. Don't get us wrong here, we must be 100% commercial. I can't stress that enough. Marketing, whether we like it or not, lives at the pointy end of capitalism. We have a huge responsibility to quantify our impact. But our value isn't in just direct response or last click attribution. Advertising isn't sales either. It's advertising. It's a slow process of brand building. 75% of advertising effect is medium to long term. The real problem isn't cookie death. The real problems are fragmentation and loss of attention. Because of fragmentation, the average Irish person now sees about 3,200 ads a week. Every year, that number grows by roughly 4%. Cutting through all that noise is getting harder and harder. The video landscape is changing dramatically, but binary arguments are unhelpful. TV isn't dead. Print isn't dead. Cinema isn't dead. But how people consume these things and all forms of video is changing dramatically. We need to plan for this new reality. To be honest, new technology is something advertising has always struggled with. The first press ads were door-to-door sales spiels written down. The first radio ads were print ads read out loud. The first TV ads were radio ads played over imagery. But we've existed with digital video for long enough now that we should know how to design and plan for it better in all its forms. In many ways, it should now be our first port of call, not the 30-second ad, but the video suite. We said we faced two problems. Fragmentation was the first, and attention is the second. Attention data is very useful in helping us plan for these new environments. And thankfully, we have an increasing amount of that information. We know what channels people pay attention to and how much attention they pay, and we know what moments matter. We need to plan to maximize those. In Ireland, that means local. So much of the content that Irish people gravitate towards is local, whether it's on TV, in short form video, in social, on catch up, even on streaming. We get a kick out of the big streamers featuring Irish content. Just focusing on the pipe could have disastrous consequences. It will have a significant impact on Indigenous media, a disaster for us culturally and professionally. We need to remember the importance of Indigenous content. It's where our ads are more effective, but it's also where we have more scope for partnership, product placement, and clever link-ups. And we should always be mindful of those big local moments, huge events, things we watch as a nation. This is where we want to show up. Local is critical to attention, because even the biggest brands in the country with the biggest budgets still can't just buy it.
The largest brands in Ireland only command about 40 minutes of their audience's attention per year through their advertising. Think about that. It's not a lot. Cutting through in that context means we need to lean into emotion. If we have so little time with the audience, we need to make them feel something. Now, this isn't a matter of opinion, it's borne out in fact. Campaigns that elicit emotional responses deliver better business results. We see it in international studies, we see it in Irish data, and we see it in the business results of our own clients. We need to prioritize those spaces and platforms in video that let us achieve that goal. Of course, reminder comms designed to nudge people towards purchase still play a critical role in driving sales. But our main job is advertising. Most of our discipline is about driving future sales, not sales now. Don't confuse brand building with being uncommercial. Brand building is incredibly commercial. 3/4 of the strength of our discipline is about creating demand. We can't lose that focus. One of the worrying side effects of fragmentation and of personalization is that brands now believe that they can, and in many cases that they should, run more and more messages with the same budget. And while technically that's true and possible, again, that's where the plumbing gets in the way. Brands can create mountains of messages, but most of them are rational. They lack impact. They're wallpaper. We worry why the pipes leak. Well, it's because we've made everything so complex, it's become ineffective. People see over 3,000 ads a week. For even the largest advertisers in the country, that means only about 10 of those ads are for your brand. The more consistent and single-minded we can be, and the more we can elicit an emotional response, the more we can stimulate demand. You've got 40 minutes a year with your audience. Do you want to use that time to try and tell them lots of things? Or do you want to repeat a few key points over and over again? Better to engage them, make an impact on them, tell them an engaging story, don't bore them. So as the landscape gets more complex, we need to get more simple. We need to go back to the idea of campaigns. Picking something the brand can campaign on for the long term. A campaign is a coherent set of actions, not a new proposition or a 4-week period of activity. The greater the noise, the fewer the messages. Especially when we think about those big local moments, huge events, things that we watch together as a nation. Most of our clients want their messages in there, but most of the time, we're just putting whatever we happen to have running at that time into those spaces. Brands should have a hero message, something that's always ready to be dropped into these environments. The greater the noise, the fewer the messages. Then we can augment this with the rational nudges, the 25% that drives the short term. But instead of obsessing over it, let's leave that to the robots. Like many of you, we've been employing an increasing amount of AI and machine learning over the last half-decade or so. In fact, we deliberately gave this presentation a strange title as a little experiment, because we asked AI to design the title image for us. In seconds, it produced multiple versions. And we've been doing similar for mock-ups. And in the last 12 months, we've been using it to help us tailor our rational bottom-of-funnel messages to different customer needs and at different moments. It's not only saved us time, on average, it's produced a huge increase of 74% in customer response. So where does all of this leave us? Well, let's remember in advertising, we're not the plumbers. Obsess about performance metrics, certainly, but don't get lost in a sea of them. Be realistic about how significant or otherwise the gains are versus the labor involved. And most importantly, don't obsess about the plumbing at the expense of key brand metrics. Are we stimulating future demand? That's the key question. That means we need to focus on the importance of attention and emotion, the real strengths of video. Viewership habits, providers, platforms, they're all changing. But attention and entertainment are constant. And some channels are better than others. Look to the power of broadcaster VOD, of non-skip YouTube, of appointment-to-view TV. 3/4 of advertising strength lies in the long term. That hasn't changed. Say fewer things more often in these environments. Separate how we design for these versus how we design for the lower funnel. But be platform agnostic. This has big implications for how we structure brands. Not more campaigns, less. One brand idea we campaign on. And finally, yes, we must still close the loop with tactical sales messages. But let's leave that to the robots.